Democratic field in a key state, though he has yet to announce his run for president. A new, very early poll shows 27% of likely Democratic caucus goers in Iowa picked Biden. He has a 2-point lead over Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders. Ed O'Keefe is in Austin, Texas, where some of the Democratic hopefuls spoke out over the weekend. Ed, good morning.
Good morning, Nora. The former vice president isn't expected to get in for a few more weeks, and those poll numbers might actually encourage him to do so. But the other Democrats already in the race now trying to make sure that Biden doesn't steal their thunder.
2020 contenders at South by Southwest in Austin tried to avoid bringing more attention to the possibility of former Vice President Biden getting into the fray.
Well, I have a lot of respect for Vice President Biden, and first we want to make sure he's getting in, but I can only address my own merit.
$1 trillion are about to change hands in the U.S. Baby boomers are the wealthiest generation in American history, and they're about to pass down those riches over the next few decades. It's being called the Great Wealth Transfer. But here's the hitch. That transfer might not be so great if boomers don't take the right estate planning steps. Step 1, make sure that inheritance you're poised to bequeath remains intact. The cost of long-term care can wipe out an entire estate in the space of just a few years. Now, the premiums can be hefty, but some financial advisors say long-term care insurance is worth it. And nothing is certain except death and taxes.
Bribery, cheating on entrance exams, and faking athletic achievements. Those are some of the methods wealthy parents use to try to get their children into some of the nation's top colleges, detailed in the scandal that came to light this week.
But our next guest says there's an ongoing scandal as the rich use a variety of other tools to gain admissions advantage for their children. Daniel Golden is the author of The Price of Admission, How America's Ruling Class Buys Its Way into Elite Colleges and Who Gets Left Outside the Gates. Daniel, welcome.
Thank you.
Now from Atlanta, Karin, thanks so much for being with us. You write about this week's admissions scandal, saying, quote, "For some, it was shocking and eye-opening. For others, it was like watching an open secret finally getting said aloud." Explain why there was such different reaction to this story.
If you just paid attention to what happened on social media alone, it was just this whole conversation where people were just taken aback. They were shocked that something like this could happen in America, could happen at our colleges and universities, you know, institutions where we think our best and brightest are supposed to go and get educated. But if you're a person of color, or if you're just someone who's been maybe a conspiracy theorist all along, this really didn't surprise you. I wasn't surprised.
Take back the streets. It doesn't matter whether or not the person that is accosting your son or daughter, or my son or daughter, my wife, your husband, my mother, your parents. It doesn't matter whether or not they were deprived as a youth. It doesn't matter or not whether or not they had no background that enabled them to become socialized into the fabric of society. It doesn't matter whether or not they're the victims of society. The end result is they're about to knock my mother on the head with a lead pipe, shoot my sister, beat up my wife, take on my sons. So I don't want to ask, what made them do this? They must be taken off the street.
Welcome to the most hated show in the black corner of the internet. That's right. He's back. He's back. Yes, yes, yes. Took 6 whole days and not a word from me. But I'm back, y'all, right? Now let's get it out the way first. Welcome, 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 and welcome back. Right? First and foremost, I want to say what's good to my subscribers in the house. Fam, new subscribers. I know he's like, wait a minute, I like this channel, but it seems like he's not on the daily. No, well, I'm back, right? I'm back to get on my grind once again. And to the fam out there who are my subscribers, those who are avid watchers of the show, glad to see you didn't leave. So it's kind of show your loyalty. I like that about you. So first and foremost, welcome back, everybody. Thanks for being a patron to the show. Passerbyers, welcome. This is always a grand opening over here. You can go down the aisle, see something you might like. Hit that like button. Hit the dislike button. We'll have a supervisor or manager come out to you. Maybe we can have a little conversation, figure out what it is. Maybe we'll give you a discount, give you an IOU. Maybe get you the return on the next time and find something else you might like and hit that like button on the second time. Because we aim to please agents. Anyway, so let me go ahead and get this out the way. Welcome to the most hated show in the black corner of the internet. Hello? This is Black Minds News, which is Black Minds TV, and I'm your host, Mr. Blows Your Mind. And this channel is to report, articulate, transmit, communicate, articulate, deveil, unveil, decode, unspell, right? Whether it's by news, video, websites, or quotes from publications. As I articulate these information, I ask that the creator of the universe be here, heart, mind, soul, and spirit. Because why? The truth don't need no partner. As a descendant of the greatest people who created the so-called greatest land on this planet that we call Earth, we give honor to our ancestors. And you know what my motto is? I'm never going to tell you what I heard. I'm only going to tell you what I know. That's right, y'all. I took a little time off because it was too much Michael Jackson, R. Kelly, Jesse Smollett. You understand? I just was not trying to get into the frills of that. So I want to apologize for those who might have been like, well, what happened to Mr. Blow Your Mind? I hope Mr. Blow Your Mind, okay. You know what I'm saying? I got you know what I'm saying? That's why I give honor to my ancestors. And first and foremost, I would give honor to the creator, right? And so based on that, I got a little protection now here. And so it was just too inundated with all that. You understand? It was just too much. And I was just like, man, it was just like, you know what I'm saying? You seen the frenzy. You know what I'm saying? Mother was just out here just, you know, just elaborating on it. And I was just like, well, go ahead and take your shine. Because, see, you know, again, as this being one of the most hated show on the black corner of the internet, the corner that the builders rejected, right? There's some stories I have touched over it, like gloss, you know, I put a little lacquer on it, right? A little shellacking on it. But I ain't going to go in depth in it because, again, I understand that, again, this is the season where everybody seems like they're trying to make some stance against what they say, the masculinity of the heterosexual black man. So they're trying to posterize when there's plenty of white masculinity. If they want to say anything is toxic, they can always go and flip the pages and look up under them skirts over there, and they'll find out that there's a lot of toxic masculinity going on there, doing a lot of things that would then, if the ones that you're trying to put as black people in the front would not be in comparison. You understand? We don't condone when people do what they do, but we're just going to say, I don't think they would be the face of it, right? So anyway, I allow that to go. And again, I was doing a lot of other things again. I was getting up my Twitter page, Instagram page, Facebook page. You understand? Trying to make other ways. So again, as you know, they got me on that 90 days. So that's why I haven't did any lives. So I'm just going to kind of wait out for the 90 days and see what happens. Maybe another month or so, right? So we'll see what happens, though, y'all. And then we'll get back to the prep and then get my call-ins and get some of you to be participants and do some of these live shows. So, again, I want to thank everybody for showing up. And, again, I apologize if anybody might have felt like, you know, man, what happened? I was around. You understand? But, again, it wasn't just so much. It was just, we got caught up on a lot of other things, too, trying to get everything situated. So, glad I'm back as well. Kind of missed it, you know what I'm saying? Because, again, it seems like it's very dry in the black corner of the internet. And, again, because I guess everybody got R. Kelly'd out and Jesse Smollett out and, you know, on all those things. So, you know, people got a little, just again drowned it with that when really they should have been looking left. You know, I was looking left, but again, eventually as I try to catch up, you know, and get back into the swing of things. Again, another week, I'm not that bad off, right? So let me go ahead and start the show off with this here, right? Well, you know, again, the corner that the builders reject, which is, again, I call myself to be a little bit affiliated with it as part of the new black media. You know, when people came out democratically, they came out and, thought they was going to give us the old okie doke, tell us the same old, try to slide that little chicken dinner to you, get the pastor to say amen. And, it seemed like we done turned a new leaf. And so when people coming out now, look like they pandering, right, to the African American, Black American, but you know how we do. We BADOS or ADOS or DOS, depending on how you want to call it. Again, for others, that's whatever it is for you, but that's what we're saying because we are the descendants of those who created the greatest country that they call the United States. And so now that it's becoming political season, it seems like, people looking to be shunning the black vote because the black vote seems to be taking a stance these days. And people are like, hey, you better avoid that. They're asking some things that can ruin your political career. So, one came out, it was like, those you ever seen the horse race. You ever been to the right? That horn come out, right? Well, I seen somebody come out the game, but and they didn't get the rest of that. As soon as they got out the horn was playing or the trumpet was playing, that was over with, huh? Came out the bat. Next one came out. Him too. Next, him too. Okay. Well, guess what? They got another one coming out. And let me show you this before I get into my little dissertation. What I think about it, and let you see some of this craziness. Keep it in mind. So, let me see if I can go ahead. Let me see how it's going to work. Let me see if we're going to get it right today. Let's see if it's going to get it right. You know what I'm saying? Just coming back, right? Put a little touches to the screens and everything, But again, let's go ahead and get it up. I got a nice little show for you today. So, let's get it going. See how it's going to get it. Let's get it. See if it's going to work.
Former Vice President Joe Biden leads the 2020 Democratic field in a key state, though he has yet to announce his run for president. A new, very early poll shows 27% of likely Democratic caucus goers in Iowa picked Biden. He has a 2-point lead over Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders. Ed O'Keefe is in Austin, Texas, where some of the Democratic hopefuls spoke out over the weekend. Ed, good morning.
Good morning, Nora. The former vice president isn't expected to get in for a few more weeks, and those poll numbers might actually encourage him to do so. But the other Democrats already in the race now trying to make sure that Biden doesn't steal their thunder.
2020 contenders at South by Southwest in Austin tried to avoid bringing more attention to the possibility of former Vice President Biden getting into the fray.
Well, I have a lot of respect for Vice President Biden, and first we want to make sure he's getting in, but I can only address my own merit.
Why are you better, more qualified, more worthy of support than the former vice president?
I'm in this race because Washington works great for the wealthy and the well-connected. It's just not working for anyone else.
Meanwhile, Senator Bernie Sanders campaigned Sunday in New Hampshire.
We are going to complete what we started here.
Sanders, campaigning for president a second time, is once again forcing a conversation among Democrats about socialism.
When we came here to New Hampshire 4 years ago, ideas that seemed so very radical at that time, well, today they are being supported by Democratic candidates from school board to president of the United States.
It's a topic we asked Democratic primary candidates about.
So in these questions of capitalist versus socialist, we put you down as a capitalist.
Put me down as a capitalist.
If you get labeled as a socialist.
Well, it's just wrong.
Former Colorado Governor John Hickenlooper addressed the question on Face the Nation.
Well, I'm comfortable. I'm happy.
Go ahead.
I'm happy to say I'm a capitalist, but I think at a certain point, the labels do nothing but divide us.
Here in Austin, more than a dozen presidential contenders made appearances over the weekend, but the eyes of the political world will be on Washington Tuesday morning. That's when the former vice president is set to address the International Association of Firefighters. It's a labor union that says it would support his presidential bid and provide him on-the-ground support in places like Iowa and New Hampshire. Nora?
All right, Ed, thank you, and rest that voice. Thank you.
Yes, go home, Ed, and go to bed. Your eyes should be in the bed closed with some tea.
Okay. All right. In our next hour, Mama Gail has a message.
Thank you very much,
Mama Gail.
Keith. Your wife just called and said, come home.
Take back the streets. It doesn't matter whether or not the person that is accosting your son or daughter or my son or daughter, my wife, your husband, my mother, your parents. It doesn't matter whether or not they were deprived as a youth. It doesn't matter or not whether or not they had no background that enabled them to become socialized into the fabric of society. It doesn't matter whether or not they're the victims of society. The end result is they're about to knock my mother on the head with a lead pipe, shoot my sister, beat up my wife, take on my sons. So I don't want to ask, what made them do this? They must be taken off the street. That's number one. There's a consensus on that. Unless we do something about that cadre of young people, tens of thousands of them, born out of wedlock, without parents, without supervision, without any structure, without any conscience developing, because they literally, I yield myself 3 more minutes, because they literally have not been socialized. They literally have not had an opportunity. We should focus on them now. If we don't, they will, or a portion of them will, become the predators 15 years from now. And Madam President, we have predators on our streets that society has, in fact, in part because of its neglect, created. Again, it does not mean because we created them that we somehow forgive them or do not take them out of society to protect my family and yours from them. They are beyond the pale, many of those people. Beyond the pale. And it's a sad commentary on society. We have no choice but to take them out of society. And the truth is, we don't very well know how to rehabilitate them at that point. That's the sad truth. I'm the guy that said, rehabilitation, when it occurs, we don't understand it and notice it. And even when we notice it and we know it occurs, we don't know why. So you cannot make rehabilitation a condition for release. That's why in our system, there's the federal system, you serve 85% of your time. It's a shame, but we don't know how to rehabilitate. But there is a consensus, and I will cease. A, we must make the streets safer. I don't care why someone is a malefactor in society. I don't care why someone is antisocial. I don't care why they become a sociopath. We have an obligation to cordon them off from the rest of society, try to help them, try to change their behavior. That's why we do in this bill. We have drug treatment and we have other treatments to try to deal with it. But they are in jail, away from my mother, your husband, our families. But we would be absolutely stupid as a society if we didn't recognize the condition that nurtured those folks still exist, and we must deal with that.
Biden almost announces he's running for president in Delaware speech. You know I'm going to say that again. Biden almost announces he's running for president in Delaware speech. This story was done March the 16th, 2019, coming from CNN News, and this is how it reads. As his 2020 decision looms, former Vice President Joe Biden walked right up to the edge of declaring a presidential run Saturday night in front of an encouraging home state crowd. I get criticized by the new left. I have the most progressive record of anybody running for the United. Anybody who would run Biden said, catching himself as a Delaware Democrat Party fundraising dinner. I didn't mean of anybody who would run, because, folks, we have to bring this country back together again. The line drew a raunchous response from the Biden-friendly crowd. Biden's appearance in Delaware comes as he's nearing a decision about a 2020 run. Biden has indicated to friends it's all but certain he'll run, and those familiar with discussions say an announcement could come as early as April. Back on his home turf in Delaware, Biden offered a possible preview of a presidential campaign message, arguing the country is engaged in a battle for the soul of America. We need a little more of the Delaware way. We got to make it more the American way, and it's lost. Our politics has become so mean, so petty, so vicious that we can't govern ourselves. In many cases, even talk to one another. Can't go on like this, folks, he said. In an apparent reference to the criticism he received after calling Vice President Mike Pence a decent guy, Biden said of politics in Delaware, "We don't treat the opposition as the enemy," he said. "We might even say a nice word even once in a while about a Republican when they do something good." Biden also previewed how he could challenge President Donald Trump, criticizing his response to the clashes in Charlottesville, Virginia, his approach to foreign leaders, and the recently released Republican budget. Trump has turned his back on the very people he promised to help. Remember how he was going to help the middle class? The cops, the firefighters, construction workers, auto workers, farmers, teachers, healthcare workers. So many folks in places like Delaware, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Michigan, Wisconsin, who have been whipsawed by changing world economy and left behind draconian policies of this administration, Biden has said. Everybody knows who he is. We got to be clear who we are. We got to understand that we Democrats, we choose hope over fear. We choose unity over division, and we choose truth over lies. Biden later added, we have to stop walking around with our heads down like woe is me. We're in such trouble. Damn it, there's no other country in the world that comes close to our capacity. None. It's time to get up, get off our backs. Remember who the hell we are. This is the United States of America. There's nothing beyond our capacity. Throughout the evening, Biden received words of encouragement from the friendly crowd, home state crowd. As he took the stage to speak, Biden was met with the chants of "Run, Joe, run." I'm confident that 598 days from now, we will together be celebrating a new president, Delaware Senator Chris Coons said. Folks, I am praying for that man, and I'm excited to hear from him just a few minutes from now. I am confident that is our voice, President Joe Biden. He doesn't just look like he's back. He looks like he's ready for a fight, Delaware Governor John Carney said. In my humble opinion, we have never needed Joe Biden more than we need him right now.
$30 trillion are about to change hands in the U.S. Baby boomers are the wealthiest generation in American history.
All right, you know how there's always a little technical difficulties when we're starting off the show. Even though you think I'll be live, I wouldn't be having that, but that don't mean that the ages are not in my system. So when we starting off the show, where we see Joe Biden. Remember Joe Biden, the vice president to Barack Hussein Obama, has decided that, according to that clip that we seen that was from the news MSC, said that the polls were showing that Joe Biden is at 27% to Bernie Sanders 25%. So they said, well, you know what? The people kind of want you, Joe. And so you see they asked some of the other candidates who were calling themselves running how they feel about Joe Biden coming out and running. Well, you know, they're going to do the polite thing. Of course, they're not going to try to give him too much. They say, well, he already got a name, you know what I'm saying? You know, so I'm trying to really can't only advocate for myself, but I mean, it's not like he's not somebody I might not be supporting, right? So you see that the question was asked whether it's about capitalism or socialism, right? Now, you know damn well these politicians, these people that run, because again, look at the money that is being used to run for a campaign. You ever thought about that? You know how much that a job for the president pays, like, you know, let's say $100,000, right? Say that about $100,000, right? It could be more than that. I didn't look it up, but I just was under the assumption that. But look at the kind of money that it takes to run a campaign, right? So you have to ask yourself, why would you spend that kind of money for a job that don't pay that little bit? It's because, again, of the wide ranging of contributions and the favors, right? That will be lucrative afterwards, if not just setting up things while you're in it. So that's why we understand that when you heard Elizabeth Warren say, well, you know, this is for the rich and we got to change. Well, see, that sounds good, but I'm pretty sure you yourself also, as I think a couple of them talked about, that you had to put me down for capitalist. I'm a capitalist. Of course. You know what I'm saying? Oh, socialism would be in that person. That would be kind of a curse word to somebody capitalist. They talking about, you know, taking out more from you to give to other people so everybody can have a somewhat the imaginary fictitious word that is used to describe fairness. Right? Oh, people don't believe that. No, oh no, you need to pull yourself by the bootstrap. I worked hard. I connived and schemed everybody out. You could do the same thing. That's what this is all about, right? So anyway, you see old Joe Biden there, right? Got in front of his Delaware crowd, and somehow he slipped, right? He slipped and said, you know, I'm going to kind of run. But he said, well, that's not really what I meant to say. I didn't mean to really say. Damn, did I say that? I didn't mean to say that. You know damn well that's what Joe Biden was trying to do, right? But he says, you know, after he did say that, right? Then didn't he not say to bring this country back together again? Well, I guess that's going to be his little slogan, right? You know, you have change we can believe in, and then we had make America great again. Now Joe Biden says bring this country back together again. So I was gonna sing that song. That's right, love again. Back in the old school day, remember that song, right? Bring it back to better again, right? So he's saying he's gonna bring it back together again because there's like a divide, like a Humpty Dumpty, right? Then failed and broke. Well, you know how it is, all the king's men and all the people can't put back Humpty Dumpty back together again. But you know, that's just the mantra. You got to come out and you got to say something, right? So Joe Biden come out saying that, right? He want to be on clear, as the article talked about. He said we got to be clear on who we are, right? Well, when they talk about this we, It's kind of like the position black people was in at the time when they was writing the rules and regulations to the game, what they call the Constitution and everything else and laws, right? Black people. So when Joe Biden is talking about we, he ain't talking about you and I. He talking about some other folks out here, right? Probably birds of the feather flock together, more likely, right? So he used some terms, right? Says we choose hope over fear, right? We choose, what do you say, unity over division, and we choose truth over lies. Now that sounds good, you know. Those words have a good ring when you would rather have hope than fearing that the worst can happen. Of course, who wouldn't want that, right? Unity versus division. Well, I guess, you know, as being DOS, ADOS, BADOS, unity is seen to be like the unicorn, right? Black folks be out here trying to unify. It's like the mythical unicorn. And it's like, you know, sometimes some people, let's say their theology is that some you're going to have to let some fall to the wayside because you can't save everybody. It's kind of like some people that I've been hearing again. I've been off for almost a week, you know what I'm saying? So I got to back and watched a lot of stuff. And a lot of this Pan-Africanness, right? And Pan-Africanness, again, you have to think about that. Pan-African versus ADOS, BADOS, or ADOS, right? And they will make the assumption that there's trying to be a separation, right? So the question becomes, when we talk about unity, can Pan-African unify quicker than ADOS, BOS, BADOS, or DOS? It's not that we're not getting, again, it's not about trying to be like we're different, but there is a difference and distinction. But again, when we talk about unity, it's kind of like a unicorn. See, Pan-African is saying unification of all Africans globally. Do we not see all that's going on? So the possibility of that is that we've always kind of been on the division side. So unity is something that we all seek, but we were always under the assumption that white folks had unity. So, Joe, what are you talking about? Unity. Is there a divide amongst white folks that you need to do a call to duty? We need to reunite ourselves because, again, the divide is that, well, you know, since the president that you have in the White House right now, again, there was a tragedy that just happened, and a lot of people said that the rhetoric that Donald Trump has used has been the catalyst for why that kind of stuff has been. It's kind of funny to me that when people of Caucasian American descent always say that because the straight talking white man that just says exactly what's already in your minds and hearts, says it openly, is any different than one that don't say it openly. Need I say that again? It seems to me that people of the Caucasian, European, Germanic background, Aryan, well, that's a myth too, but the background, always think that because the white man or white woman who speak straight talk, right, and say what they really feel, inspires other people to be hatred. But I guess if you don't say anything, but yet the actions that are being done and the clandestine way things are being done, I guess that don't trigger the same response. I beg your pardon. Right? I beg your pardon. So I guess, again, there's a rallying cry that Joe is blowing that dog whistle to those, again, to re-galvanize and say, well, if I run, you better support me, right? And I'm just kind of myself, again, you know, he said one other thing before I get into that other thing that he talked about. He said, we was the ones out there working in the field. We were not included in when they was making the Constitution and all the other laws. So when he said we, he ain't talking about you and I. He talking about we is them. He said that there's nothing, when we look in the history of ourselves, beyond the capacity. There's nothing since the great old American, you know, the old rallying cry, the old John Wayne. You know, the old John Wayne stuff. So again, it's a rallying cry, right? Trying to galvanize. We got to get it out of the hand of this guy who really just, you know, really let everybody get in the window to see what we're really thinking about. Because again, a man with that kind of money, he has to be about capitalism. He's a businessman, and you know, he's running the same crowds and parties as everybody else. So what kind of conversation did he having when he around y'all? The same conversation he's having openly. So it is what it is, right? So, well, let's see. So since they say Joe is somebody different. He ain't like this one here, right? Right? But did you see the video that I played it again that was on C-SPAN back it was 93, right? So let's say 93 to 2019. We don't know exactly month it was, so we just gonna say 93 and 18. We know it's 18. We don't know what month, so we're gonna say it still hit the month yet. So we say 25 years ago, Joe Biden got before the assembly and spoke some things that he felt from the truth of his heart. You know, kind of like I say, we got to get rid of this other cat in here because he said something that's making it. But we got to look at the thing that you just said, Joe. All right, folks, here you go. So, Joe was back in 93, right? He said, number one, we got to take back the streets. Now, this is 93. Right, back in 93, you know what's going on, crack, an epidemic and, selling the, drugs and, gang violence is high, hip, gangster rappers, pumping in every car through them woofers and, you know what I'm saying? So, this is the time of this is going, because again, you got to remember that Slick Willie was just in the White House, right? Well, was Slick Willie in the house? I think Slick Willie was in there right at that time, right? So, this whole thing about, predators that we heard that Hillary had talked about, they all go to the same kind of parties and events, and they fraternize and know each other. So it's not surprisingly when we hear these kind of, talking points and people making analogies that seem to be their concern, but again, they still smell like the same old thing. That the difference between this one who might be overtly versus this one who over here is clandestine. I have to say that again. The person who might be overtly saying things versus the one who's clandestinely saying things, and when it's all, if you do the math, at the end, you're going to still get the sum total. So he said we got to take back the streets, right? He said it doesn't matter, right? He said it didn't matter. Well, he kept reiterating it didn't matter. You know what he's talking about? It don't matter. Well, we're going to talk about what that don't matter is, right? So I said, don't matter. He said, now, wait a minute. Attacking my family, right? Right? You know what they do. Kind of like back in that. Who did y'all see that movie back in the day when they talking about the birth of a nation? And the whole theme was about attacking and taking the white woman, right? So you see what Joe Biden, he alluded to. He got a pipe to my mother. Busting my pipe with my mother. He's beating up my wife, and he's attacking my kids. What? Who are you talking about? Wait a minute, where you live at? You live down where I live at? I know you don't live where I live at. Wait a minute. Huh? I know you don't live where I live at, so I don't know the possibilities of that happening are slim chance to none. You understand? But this is a hypothetical talk. But again, who are you selling that to? Who was he blowing the whistle to, right? 25 years ago, right? So let's see on with some of the stuff he was saying, right? So he was dog whistling again about this element of society, right? These predators of society, and that it's spilling and coming to where he lives. Now again, if we was to say hill and down on the the valley. He nowhere down near the valley. He's up on the hill. He's asking us if the water is rising up into the hill, right? We know that's not true. So he goes on and says he don't care if they were deprived, right? If they were deprived, they were deprived and didn't have a good upbringing and background that enabled them to, be acclimated or to become socialized into the fabric of society. He didn't care if they were the victims of society. Huh? He said he didn't care about that. He said the end result is that we take them down, that we lock them up, and don't care if we contributing and cause of the effects that made them in that. All I care about is we taking care and making sure that they be locked up. And based on them being locked up, we really don't know how to deal with it. We don't know how to rehabilitate them. But as long as they're locked up and we give them the 3 hots in a cot and medicate them and make them experiment lab rats and, he said, coordinate them off. And put them into them red zones that we designated and allow them to live in that environment, but don't never allow it to come where we live at. And if we do, we would be a dumb society if we don't, because this side right now, he said this was 93 and 15 years. Well, Joe, you're 10 years a little late. It's 25 years now. And now you talking about running for president. So black folks, are you hearing me? Huh? Think about it. Think about it. Somebody said that openly like that. Huh? It's part of, the procession that was going on that day. And they were talking about, again, all those whistles and bells was talking about black people, our people, again, due to the simple fact of what we have endured. Again, we are on the 400-year commemorative memory of what our ancestors, according to their count. We don't know we know they count ain't never accurate, but according to what they say, 1619 is the time they count. But we know those who are, avid readers of history or historians and so forth, 1619 ain't really the time, but that's what they gonna count. So we say 400 years, right? 400 years. And what black folks have been through and gone through and continue to go through all kinds of clandestine ways and overtly ways that Joe Biden about 25 years ago was still like, I don't care what if we did. Yes, we might have created, but I don't give a damn. Wait a minute, hold on. What kind of man is that? What kind of understanding is that? What kind of humanity is that? You created something, wouldn't it be in best interest of everybody? Because again, if you corn them off and put them and make them live amongst other people, I guess what's good for you ain't good for the other ganders. That's your problem, really? We didn't create that. The society, as you say, but it's not really so much of the society that created it. It is those clandestine laws and policies and, this galvanization to keep people corned off, even though they didn't know they were being corned off, and then breeding in certain types of environments and attitudes that now become your predatory things that you fear the most. Those are the things you now fear the most. And so Joe goes on, he says some more things, right? He said the end result, as long as we get them locked up, right? Right? That's all he cared. He said there's a consensus on this, to do this. There's not just me, there's a consensus. Well, that same consensus would be the simple fact that when they talked about reparations, when they showed that, talking about 68% to 20, I think 62% to 28% of people who would advocate for, well, that's that same consensus is the same one that's saying that, right? So again, who would that be? Well, that's pretty much the numbers that y'all claim when y'all say population, right? When you're talking about the demographics, you always say y'all about 60% of the nation. So basically, white folks will never agree to that, but white folks are in consensus to locking niggas up. Do I have to say that again? The poll that they showed at the time they talking about the reparation of those who've seen that video that it did, remember they said it was 62% to 28%, right? So it's basically 7-3 as in disfavor to reparation. Now that would be the consensus that, and we know primarily the numbers of that. I'm not going to say the entirety, some banal, is that they say, some banal, but that same consensus would be in the same numbers when you talk about locking niggas up to keep them from being, spilling over into your communities based on the, disenfranchised and depriving them from, again, as you say, they didn't have the right tools to be acclimated into society, right? Due to the being reared by, as they say, what they call that word, wedlock. Out of wedlock. So you mean to tell me that when we talk about, again, going back in the time, they talk about can't have a man in the house to get some welfare due to the simple fact that that's the way it was all set up and design, excuse me, y'all. And so, you understand? See, and that's just the attitude that people be having. It's like they just say, well, we know we have our hands in it, but we ain't going to really do too much about it, but we will, we will end it. Huh? We started, but we'll end it. But what about in between? What about the remedies? What about trying to cure? That's not part of the game. I guess that was never part of the game. So you got him going on talking about, he says that, he said, if we don't do something about this, or these peoples, then he threw in the dramatization, tens of thousands, he said tens of thousands of them, who are coming out of wedlock, who have no discipline, who have no structure, and he pointed to his head, no consciousness, meaning they got no brains, right? Well, what happens when you go to a science laboratory and they got the animals in there, you're injecting them with all kind of stuff and shock treatment and putting all kind of experiments and tests on them? Did anybody get any videos of that? Oh, no. Oh, the black community. That's what the human experiment place is, right? Ain't that where the experiment is going on there? So now that, again, it's becoming, as in the case then, that they still feel now. But again, there's another element to it. See, there's been a self-correcting going on here to the fact that, again, as Democrats are finding out, that all that fear that you're talking about back in 93, and he said about 15 years. Well, 10 years later, it's 25 years, and guess what done happened, Joe? They in here talking about reparations now. They ain't talking about coming up there piping your mom. They ain't talking about none of that shit. What they talking about is where these tangibles at. What about, so since you didn't care, you didn't care, well, now they care, and they say, guess what? I got enough sense to know to say reparations. I understand that you could cure. How about that? We understand that now. Oh, so you about to run, Joe? Check it out. Cut the check. Just cut the motherfucking check. They stayed about your piping your mom and fighting your children, and they stayed away from doing that, Joe. Right? And the ones that you got locked up, again, he even said the reason why they do the federal crimes, they keep locked up 85%, they had to do 85% because we don't know how to rehab them. Right? So we make them do the most of the time, so that way we know that at least we know where they at. Right? And the high probability of some shit going down up in there, they get a 50% chance of getting up out of there. Right? So So here's a cat about ready to run for president. Well, Joe, you're saying all the things, but guess what? You're going to have to come out the bag again. Because, see, I think the reason why they want to go with old Joe, because they think because old Joe was right next to Obama. That game played. He made it so hard for anybody who going to try to run on the black ticket. Now that, again, all those predators have grown up and now, you know, they got next to Gen X. Then get in the game, tell them how to get on code, how this thing go. And now they saying, look, homie, we looking for a check. You owe me and my peoples. You understand? All that other stuff, we got that on hold for right now. Right now, that's on hold. So what you gonna do? Huh? What you gonna do? So here when Joe Biden is hesitating because he knows the question that's gonna have to be asked, Joe. Are you for reparations? Any Democrat that's running at this point in time, the question going to come when it comes to this black vote. Are you for reparations? Are you understanding about ADOS, DOS, and BADOS? Are you understand what they talking about? Okay. So that was Joe Biden, y'all. Right? Come right out the gates, doing what he doing, right? Old Joe, right? Joe think he was going to run on Obama because the black man and black people supposed to have loved Obama. But now in retrospect, looking back, I don't think that's where you want to run to. I don't think you want to use him. You might have thought that was a good place to run, but that may not be what you want to do. So let me go ahead and go to the next part here. You know, this been out there, right? Well, let's see. Let me go ahead and do this here, right? Cause see, let me show you this. See, let's. I'll have to put it all in perspective here. You understand? Now here's old Joe Biden to come on out and say I'll probably be the best, you know, individual democratically that should be able to run against Donald Trump. You know what I'm saying? Maybe I'll say some sweet few things. And, you know, based on the fact that I'm pretty sure if Joe Biden run, guess who's going to come out of the damn rock, out of the foxhole? You know Obama going to bring him Ross right out there, right? I said him Ross. I said it. Him Ross. Right? He going to bring him Ross out the foxhole. Right? And try to bring back the old chant, yes, you can, but it's going to be like, no, you can't. That burn up, homie. You can't get that no more. You done made it hard for any of this time and day for them to come out without have to say what they gonna do. And so if you think that's gonna work, the question gonna be just like Kamala came out, just like Bernie came out, right? Well, you gonna try it too? Get prepared for this one, folks. Y'all finna see it. You're going to see the power of the black corner of the internet once again. So, all right. So, you know, again, it's always, again, like I was saying about, it takes money to run to be as part of this, you know, political, right? Again, they spend millions and millions of dollars to make maybe a six-figure salary, right? So it's a game that has some perks in it. It's got a lot of potentials to make like investments and deals so that you can bring families up and giving them kind of good jobs, nepotism and all that good stuff, right? So, you know, black folks, we don't know much about, you know, that. You know, we go through the process to learn. You know, so it's kind of like an entry-level job. You come in, you know, they don't do that no more. Entry level come in, you don't really know nothing but again, repetition, you know what I'm saying? It'd be, you know, kind of keep doing the same old thing after a while. It depends on your cognitive skills and your abilities, and you pick up and you quit. So when you quit like that, you can get an entry level, come in and boom, you hold up and it be kind of slow, and you don't hit you in that 60 days, but after you're going to be getting fired, right? Probably 90 days, right? The game might have changed, but you know, 90 days, right? And so So, you know, we go through the process to learn how things go. We learn about little perks, you know. That's why a lot of times they don't like you talking about the job and the work and all that, say politics and stuff. But, you know, once somebody run across somebody who cool, tell you a few things, and you be like, oh, that's how you do that. So then you, again, being black people, you take some, you know, information is power, right? And then you take it and you say, oh, damn, okay, I can do this. Oh, I learned how to do this. So recently something fell out. And the thing is, we kind of already knew what it was, but maybe the thing is some people, again, you know, you could have people who would they call race man, race woman, race people, who always would talk about how the dynamic between black and white and these, you know, clandestine ways of how they move and operate. And some people be like, you're always on that race stuff, right? You're always on that. White people are not that bad. You know, you're just lazy. You don't really just work hard. You know, there's some of the hardest working and honest, good, wholesome people. Some but all, right? Well, this story had came up, and people looked at it and was kind of questionable, like, okay, what this all about, huh? Where's this? It just kind of just gave the reality of what you already kind of knew. Well, you know what happens sometimes, the truth just falls out. And again, a lot of truth been falling out based on the simple fact of being what we've been talking about, BADOS, ADOS, and DOS. We talking about reparations. We're talking about all the plight and disenfranchisement that has been happening to black people ever since we've been in our encounters and dealings with people, and a lot of the restrictions, right, and policies and laws that have been there. And then we've seen this. And let me show you, and we shall be right back, I think. It should be okay. Let's see. It'll be all right. Let's see if we're going to be all right. Let's see if we're going to get it all right. Let's see.
$3 trillion are about to change hands in the U.S. Baby boomers are the wealthiest generation in American history, and they're about to pass down those riches over the next few decades. It's being called the Great Wealth Transfer. But here's the hitch. That transfer might not be so great if boomers don't take the right estate planning steps. Step 1, make sure that inheritance you're poised to bequeath remains intact. The cost of long-term care can wipe out an entire estate in the space of just a few years. Now, the premiums can be hefty, but some financial advisors say long-term care insurance is worth it. And nothing is certain except death and taxes. Now, most estates are not subject to federal estate tax because the bar for exemption is pretty high. But watch out for state tax. Some have much lower estate tax thresholds. Now, let's say you want to put some conditions on how your inheritance is spent. Try a trust. You can set an exact time when assets pass on to your beneficiaries or how it should be spent. Another huge plus, trusts can minimize estate taxes and keep your estate out of probate court. Keep in mind that probate court process can prove to be both time-consuming and expensive, which ultimately chips away at your estate. Another way to avoid it, ditch the will and try something called a living trust. It will hold your assets while you're still alive and then transfer it over to your beneficiaries after you die. Plus, avoiding probate means it's a private transaction. Probate is public, which means everyone knows your business. So take care of that legacy planning now, and your heirs will be well in the black later on.
Hey there, thanks for checking out CNBC on YouTube. Be sure to subscribe to stay up to date on all of the day's biggest stories. You can also click on any of the videos around me to watch the latest from CNBC. Thanks for watching.
Karin joins us now from Atlanta. Karin, thanks so much for being with us. You write about this week's admissions scandal, saying, quote, "For some, it was shocking and eye-opening. For others, it was like watching an open secret finally getting said aloud." Explain why there was such different reaction to this story.
If you just paid attention to what happened on social media alone, it was just this whole conversation where people were just taken aback. They were shocked that something like this could happen in America, could happen at our colleges and universities, you know, institutions where we think our best and brightest are supposed to go and get educated. But if you're a person of color, or if you're just someone who's been maybe a conspiracy theorist all along, this really didn't surprise you. I wasn't surprised by this. You know, if we look at the way colleges let students in, Even if you look at how some schools have legacy clauses where, you know, if your grandparents or your parents went here, or if they're big donors, you have a better chance of getting in. Even that can raise some eyebrows if you really think about how that system is set up. So for people like myself, I wasn't surprised. But for others, they were really shocked and taken aback by what we found out this week and everything that's still being reported.
And you spoke with the executive director of the University of Southern California Race and Equity Center. USC is one of the schools named in the admissions scandal. What did he reveal about race and wealth when it comes to the admissions process?
My conversation with him was very eye-opening because, you know, he has some very poignant stats telling me about the percentage of college admissions, people who are over the programs, the directors, and the racial backgrounds. And when you think about how many people of color, Black, Asian, Middle Eastern, Hispanic, get into schools compared to white students, and then you look at who's over those programs and who gets the final say on who gets admitted and who doesn't, it raises some eyebrows. And you have to talk about diversity and inclusion, not just on your student enrollment and who you're letting into your schools, but also the decision makers and their racial background and why and who is, you know, picked to make those decisions on who gets into school and who doesn't.
And on that point, the USC official says more than 80% of college admissions officials are white. Do we know specifically what role does that play in college admissions?
Not necessarily specifically, but it does give you a reason to take pause and say, okay, if 80% of college admissions directors are white, what is that saying? Do you not believe that other races can do this job? Do you just believe that these are the only people on earth that have the expertise and the knowledge to allow students into college and universities? Like, this is a bigger conversation in itself, which needs to be examined. And this whole college admissions system, as we see, we need way more transparency. And then you also have to earn the trust back. If you're a USC or a UCLA or a Yale or a Penn or whatever schools that have been involved in this, and maybe even more that come in the future, I'm really interested to see how the education system as a whole tackles this and what the future will look like.
Well, this scandal comes a year after another FBI probe hit the NCAA. Remind us again what happened there and what's happening now with the investigation.
You know, this is Selection Sunday. This is one of the biggest days of the year for college basketball, and everyone's excited. But if we go back to the beginning of last year, even before last college basketball season started, is when the FBI investigation trickled down. And it really started with the Brian Bowen case at the University of Louisville, where we basically found out that Adidas paid his father close to, I believe it was $100,000 for his services for his son to get admitted to that school. And since then, it's just been bombshell after bombshell with shoe companies, with schools, with coaches, with players losing eligibility, coaches getting fired, and a couple more coaches on the hot seat. Because basically for the last couple of years, the FBI had wiretaps, they had text messages, they had screenshots, they had everything. And the system that we know and love from one of my favorite sports as a sports writer has just been blown up as we're trying to figure out and see who's all implicated. And there's still more stuff coming down the pipeline.
And yet you write that you see positive change being possible after the NCAA scandal, but not in the admissions controversy. Why?
Because in the NCAA basketball schedule, there are changes coming. For instance, the one and done rule, we feel is on its way out. It may have just 1 or 2 more years left. They've made some great changes on allowing in the future, I believe next season, letting some of the top prospects in basketball have agents, letting them be able to test the draft waters and then come back to school. So there are some real changes that may sway some of this. And then also looking into the shoe companies and the relationships between schools and university. So we've seen some very progressive, quick acting things happening with college basketball. But with this, with college admissions, like, where does it stop? Does this even happen at junior colleges, at community colleges? We've been deeming that this has happened at the elite universities. But what about the schools that may not be elite? This can also be going on there. So this is a whole nother can of worms. And I feel like this is going to go on for a while because there are just so many different levels and so many different schools and colleges, universities in this country that this may have been taking on, that maybe the FBI just wasn't focusing on those schools, but it could also still been happening.
So critical to examine the systems and these processes that are in place. Karan J. Phillips. Karan, thanks very much for your time.
Thank you, Elaine.
Turn to another issue on those lines, but this is also dividing Democrats on the trail. You've said that there needs to be
Bribery, cheating on entrance exams, and faking. Bribery, cheating on entrance exams, and faking athletic achievements. Those are some of the methods wealthy parents use to try to get their children into some of the nation's top colleges, detailed in the scandal that came to light this week.
But our next guest says there's an ongoing scandal as the rich use a variety of other tools to gain admissions advantage for their children. Daniel Golden is the author of The Price of Admission: How America's Ruling Class Buys Its Way into Elite Colleges and Who Gets Left Outside the Gates. Daniel, welcome.
Thank you.
This has really struck a nerve. Parents are simply incensed. And I think there was this notion, people knew that wealth could buy influence. You certainly pointed it out back in 2006. So why does this come as such a shock?
Well, I think since I wrote my book, colleges have become even harder to get into, even more selective. So what this suggests that maybe the wealthy are worried that even with a big donation, their kids may not get into college. So what the independent counselor who masterminded this scheme, this fellow Singer, what he seems to have been selling was certainty. You know, his message was, if I get your kid an inflated fake test score and bogus status as a recruited athlete, the admission will be guaranteed. It's even better than a donation. So they ratcheted it up to another level. Here's what you need now.
Daniel, when you published your book back in 2006, it was interesting that the reaction you got wasn't that so much that people were appalled. It's actually people contacted you to try to figure out how they could get their kid into college through this system, right?
That's right. Every month or two, somebody would call me and say, you know, I read your book. My son or daughter would like to go to Harvard or Yale or Princeton. I'd like to hire you as an admissions consultant.
Wow.
I'd say, I don't think you quite got my point.
You're missing the point of it a
Exactly.
little bit here. You know, parents want to help their kids get ahead, and there are ways you do help them with test prep courses and things that are along the legal lines, but giving them an advantage over others. In this case, there were ethical lines that were crossed. There were legal lines that were crossed. Which are more concerning, I guess?
Well, this went a lot farther, and I think maybe the biggest concern to me is the rise of these independent counselors like Singer, who are paid immense sums by parents to get their kids into college. When I wrote my book, this was just starting, but now it's a growing and completely unregulated industry, and they get around the traditional guidance counselor at the high school, whose job is to find the best fit for each student.
Right.
And instead, they're only beholden to the wealthy parents. And it's some of them are very nice and responsible people, but the incentives are wrongly arranged, and that's ripe for abuse, as in this case.
So what does it mean for kids that do not have a parent who can help them with resources, with money like that?
Yes.
Well, I think it's kind of a slap in the face to these kids who are trying to get in on their own, legitimately, on hard work and achievement. And it's also a reminder of the point in my book that so many students benefit from preferences for the wealthy. You know, what I call the preferences of privilege, like legacy preference for children of alumni, development preference for candidates recommended by the fundraising office, and so on.
The universities, Daniel, have been saying they're victims too. Are they, or are they part of a system that's got a real problem?
Yeah, I don't see them as victims. I mean, they may have been, deceived in this case, but overall, they developed and they perpetuate a system that's tilted toward the wealthy and made this kind of corruption possible.
You mentioned evening the playing field here, and for a long time, what is taking place here is actually what affirmative action programs have been charged as doing. How does that play out? What the critics have said in the past about those?
Well, you know, people have criticized affirmative action as if it was the only exception to a merit-based system. In reality, the impact of affirmative action is far outweighed by the cumulative preferences for the rich and the famous and the powerful. So, you know, what people often call white affirmative action.
Right.
So this puts it in perspective.
Do you think this is going to change things at all, Daniel?
Not fundamentally, I don't think, because colleges are too fearful to offend the wealthy people who donate money. I do anticipate some tweaks to the system. For example, one thing this case exposed was that when a college coach goes to the admissions committee and says, I want you to admit this recruited athlete, the committee just rubber stamps it. They don't look at all. And now I think, you know, because in this case, the coaches were bribed so that the people they were touting weren't actually athletes. I think that'll change, and admissions committees will now take a closer look. And maybe these independent counselors, the kids they recommend, will come under more scrutiny. But those kinds of, you know, minor changes I'd anticipate.
So more transparency, possibly.
Dan Golden, thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Thanks. My pleasure.
All right, we're back. All right, I want to apologize for that first video. That's going to be on the next part there. All right, so what we have here is a failure to administrate. Cool Hand Luke, right? So, again, you know, what's happened here, man? You know what's happening? You know, when the beginning of the year from January came out with the new moon, right? It had the wolf moon, right? Came up a new year, had the full moon, and 2019 is a year of change. So what we see is also was the 400 year commemorative of the 1619, and it just seems that things have just keep being revealed and revealed and revealed and revealed and revealed. And so what we find out is that the game has always been rigged. And you know, white folks know they are the culprits to rigging. Now, again, I'm pretty sure there are, you know, again, as they say that black people only have about 2% of the wealth of this nation. And for those black families that have the extra, you know, let's say pocket change, they might be able to indulge in this kind of activity. But again, they will be the very minority. And I don't even like using that word minority, because minority in the law means child, but in this case, it's a small group. So I'll just say, as a small group, there's a small segment of some blacks that might be able to play this game that they talk about. But we know primarily it's a white folks game. And the reason why you know this is for a few reasons. Well, let's put it this way. So you see that they talked about, you know, about this college admission scandal, and they, right, you know, broke, and Our number is 33, right? You know, you see that 33 for those who be into that. You know, they said 33 parents is going to get caught up. It's going to be the face of the scandal. At least that's what they're going to show. But we know that has to be much bigger than that because, again, this game ain't brand new. This game been going on for a long time, right? Been going on a long time, right? That's what all that donations and, you know, and money to coffer and wings of buildings. You know what I'm talking about, right? So this been going on a long time. The only difference is at one particular time in this country when it was just the dynamic between black and white, right? The disparity would be the fact that you had black people who might excel educationally, got scholarships and so forth. We had certain parents that could work hard and earn enough and the dollar stretched so they could pay for school. But as the inflationary aspect of the money got shrinked, harder for economics and harder for jobs and people to maintain. So then it became about either you had the acumen of mind to pass those tests, and it got to the point of SATs, and those will be ways to get you in college admissions. And then again, you got more and more immigrants coming in. So the country was getting stuffed with a lot of people, a lot of kids. So now how do you weed them out? Right? So guess what's the old way that, again, if this was a game of race, or like let's say if a competition in which basically if self-preservation is what all nations must do as a people. Yes, I know let's say we're all United States, we're Americans, but again, this game is divided up. Us, they, and we, right? And so when they competing, they had to find an advantage. So why would we be surprised that, the game was rigged? Well, you see, the numbers spell out, the statistics spell out 80% of most of the colleges in the country, the ones who do admissions, are white folks. Well, guess what? You know, they have to have, again, they used to talk about the 10-to-1 rule and so forth. So what would be anything that they don't believe strategically, like a chess game, that and things that they know that are of very great importance, we're going to have the demographics in our favor so that, again, we can break the glass in case of emergency. Let's just say, what do you mean by that, Mr. Blow Your Mind? Well, break the glass would be this. You know, they be having this international scholastic competition. You know, those children from other nations be way smarter than old United States, and yet United States is supposed to be I ain't gonna say no supposed to be, because my ancestors, the BADOS, the ADS, and the DOS, built the greatest country that they call on the planet Earth. But the people who seem to be who will be the trustees who are running it, you know how they'll say we black folks are lazy and shiftless and we don't want to work and all that? Well, it seems to be that other people are not as either they're lazy and shiftless, right? To the fact that if you say it's a race, and we're going to go on the God-given gift that each and every individual with some kind of spirit in them, why do you always got to you got to find the advantage? Always got to find the slant. Why? Maybe you just not as good as everybody else. Maybe that's not as good as everybody else. And so, what way that you have an advantage on every person in this nation? Well, I'll go back to when I was talking about the Joe Biden and them, and they said there was a socialism versus what? Capitalism. So if we on the 400-year commemorative about what done transpired in this country, and a lot of you are the descendants of that who gained off that free 400 years, none have to pay I can't say employees, off my ancestors' back. You didn't have to pay. You can only live off the fat of the cow and chew the cud. Then you have plenty of wealth. Read it again, as I'm going to do next. We're going to talk about that wealth, right? So, with that being said, you have plenty of money to flaunt and floss and make it rain. So they will do it. Maybe they won't go in the club and do it like, I be showing some of our shorties and young folks out there doing. But they make it rain and fluctuate. It counts for the benefits so that they can prosper and continue of their generational aspect of it, right? So what they do is in a chess game, they got certain pieces and pawns and certain pieces put in positions to be able to utilize it when break the glass so that they can do it. And so we come to find out that the scandals is about filling the coffers of those who have the gates key to allow certain things to be yea and nay. Unbeknownst under the guise, because you couldn't see, because again it's hidden, because these are things that may not just be on your mind. Because see, you have been infused in mind with the thought to work hard and study hard and try to be, the best of the possible of your ability. And yet, other folks over here just have to just fork out money and still get the benefits of what you so hard work for. So that just goes to show you that old saying was always a trick, because who worked harder than black ADOS, and DOS, and even as the descendants, we still work harder because we ain't got nothing. And so with anything we got, we work much harder. Even if you out here and you have to be out here and hustling, your hustle is way harder than the hustle of other folks, right? So we see that the man came out with a book talking about the price of admissions, right? He kind of went in there and talked about all that stuff there. And then the woman was like, why were some people under the notion? Well, the notion was they always had it, but they just couldn't quite put their finger on it. Because why? The lower echelons of life, the lumpen proletariats, children, when they come from people who are poor, they already know mom and dad ain't got no money to get you through no college. So guess what? That boy could dunk. That boy can swing a bat. That boy fast. Even get to the back. The girls are even doing that, right? So they try to use the God-given gift to find a way to get a scholarship. And then, depending on where you're coming from, you can actually use your intelligence, right? As we seen the one sister, remember the show I did, and did the girl that passed the ACT test, right? Her SAT test, remember her score was one way and came back and then she got a perfect score. They were like, no, right? No way. And the race said she cheated, but she didn't cheat, but they're not going to give her credit for, Really? You understand? Well, that's the reason why, because it was going to take a scholarship. It was going to take away some money now. Get it? Think what I'm saying? It was going to be able to take some money away that somebody was relying on getting that from somebody who had money to put in the coffer. You was going to get it free being black and all this other stuff. We want somebody who going to, because let me give y'all some history right quick. All right, so I'm going to ask you, do most of y'all even know the history of how colleges began? Do you even know? Colleges began because it starts with the guilds. The guilds. And so the guilds had all the knowledge of this time. Now, this is European knowledge here, this history of Europeans. We're talking about the same people we talking about, right? You know, them universities and stuff, them European names, the European schools built for and so forth and all that stuff, right? So the guild, what you did, again, there's the levels to it. There's your journeyman, there's your apprentice, and then there's your master. Now, the guild, that's what it was. He had all the skills. And at those times back then, those who had money would pay the master for their children to sit upon the master to learn the craftsmanship. All it is reverting back to that. This really is it really a scandal, or do y'all really didn't understand the game? See, they tell you one thing, so you don't know all the things. And again, they say ignorance is not a defense in the law. So in the case, they say, okay, well, all right, you caught us. We were doing this. But that's the way it always was in the beginning. Any damn way they was paying. It was only because you kind of forced us to make us uphold the words that we said that this country is for everybody, but we was not talking about you because, nigga, you was down in the basement and shit when we wrote this shit. We didn't even think about you. But time caught up, and now we have to deal with it. So, okay, we let you in. So, all right. So, what happened is they were paying. So, you got to pay. Then you journeyed, right? Get to the apprentice, and we get good enough, the craftsmanship gets to the point that you become a master, right? That is where your college began. The college began with the guilds and them that teaching them that set at the foot. European style, right? That's where it coming from. So this is all this is. They went back and doing stuff again at the game that they know because this is who they is. The system is rigged for them, right? So they said that, you know, again, said about 33 parents are the ones that are going to take this, right? They're going to be the ones taking the fun of that, right? Now, the funny part that I thought about this was this, right? I ain't going to say funny, but look at how they try to deflect. You know, they great at deflecting, right? A vampire put the sun, right? Put that sun in the, right? Got to run and hide from the sun, so he deflected it. Now check out, look, did you peep it? How they deflected? So here it was, he was talking about the parents, and you see how they didn't get in too deep into that, into the whole scandal aspect, because again, if they're going to throw the number 33, you know it's way bigger than that, because again, we have to say, this is 2019. How far back where we had to go, right? Just like I was saying, the dumbing down of the nation, it goes back to the international scholastic. They said the United States was losing all the scholastic part, but they was the number one when it came to being braggadocious and all that shit. Right? So the dumbing down is because parents went to do what? They had to pay. Oh, you know, shit. I mean, come on, man. Do you know if the system was built on blackness, everything black, how we would be just passing every damn thing, right? Right? So, I'm just saying this. Funny, man. So what they did is, they made the dichotomy with them parents they was talking about and flipped that shit on basketball. Did y'all catch that? So you went from people who are wealthy, who got money, who put money under the table, who doing things again. You say unethical, but again, we just talking about who people is from the get go. Will you ever had ethics? You never did not lie. Again, the Indian said, "Don't trust a no white man. They speak up with a forked tongue." Right? All that shit. Right? Right? So you went over to the poor black man, the poor black parents. No, you know what? The difference here is, let's look at this. Let's look at this. Now here's people who got money in the way that you got money. Some banal. I don't know how you all got your money, but we're gonna say most of you got your money off my ancestors. Generational wealth been passed down, right? So you got a lot of money you still didn't earn and didn't on that way. So here it is. You want to try to take somebody from that position and say, well, what about the NCAA basketball scandal. You know, they was paying college players money and shoe contracts and things of that when, wait a minute. You getting people who coming out of conditions who are poor, who parents don't make no money due to the simple fact, well, again, all the systemicness of this country and how it keeps and prohibits. And then here's somebody who got a God's given gift. Oh, that perks the white man right up. Oh, you already know when you got the gift, you thinking how you going to get into his shit to make some money. He's looking at your shit, how he can get you to make way more money he's going to ever pay you. Huh? Do I need to say that again? You with the God-given gift is looking at how you could get into the white man shit so that you can make some money. And it will be, in your eyes, it's good money. But when he looking at you, he looking at all the money he going to make that he not paying you. So let's take Michael Jordan again. I said this before. Michael Jordan was in the league for 10 years making $900,000. But look at all the money they were selling out everywhere he was going. The corporate, they couldn't keep a damn 23 jersey. Huh? They couldn't keep enough seats in the stadium. Huh? But he was only getting $900,000 a year on his contract for 10 years. Huh? So they love to see that guy walking past like that. Because that's extra money. So all the money that they was making in college, you coming in, because guess what? When you got a good, great athletic program, now let's look at this. They paying money for them to be there, to be at the school so they can be partying and having a good ass time because they not passing no class. They ain't got to pass no class. They already got the name to be on their diploma to say that they went to the goddamn school. They just paid the money for the shit like a vending machine. Huh? That's what they did. Put the money in the vending machine, pull the slot, boom, they got the diploma. All they got to do is just pay for it. Now, here your ass got to do. You either got to play basketball or your ass got to really pass the damn test. That ain't what they was doing. That ain't what they got to do. Right? So here it is. You want to make poor parents, somebody going to offer them, a car and some money and get them a house, so they can sign you to get them to school. Because again, the college coach job is based on what? It's based on his winning and based on the kind of athletes he get to come to them for his program. So you think that ain't gonna be part of the game? How you gonna get this nigga? He ain't got no money. You got to offer something. It's kind of like what black folks, ADOS, DOS, BADOS said. Look, we got something on this table. You want these votes? You want to win? What you got for us? What that, huh? The scholarship ain't enough. 3 hots in the cot and the scholarship? That ain't enough. Right? So that's what happens, right? So, but you try to make the comparison. 2 different situations. The student athlete or the athlete is bringing something that the school gonna make money off of. The one that's paying is undermining everybody else who might be qualified in a academic way to get that, but they getting bumped because of the money. And then did you see that slick ass shit they said here? They said affirmative action. Why would y'all even put that in your mouth? Why would y'all even put affirmative action in your mouth? Now you see why they had to be affirmative action. And again, just again as ADOS, DOS, BADOS, affirmative action was only made for black folks. But we know when they end up wrote and they made it for everybody who could come here and again get citizenship. I don't understand that. I don't understand how if your parents is born somewhere and you come be born here, that makes you a citizen over somebody who actually has lineage of been in the blood and built there, and you get to get before them. It's always about undermining because you know who, again, the scandal is showing when you don't have the gift, when you ain't got rid of the skills, you got to always find a slant and cheat in order for you to compete because you can't compete against the natural. You're going to always come up short. Right? You're going to always come up short. So affirmative action just go to show you that's why you had to have it. You had to have a quota because look at the shit that was being done. If it go your way, you would have one Negro in the whole damn school as a, let's say, a academic Negro versus, yeah, you're going to have football, you're going to have basketball, the athletics, you're going to have Negro. But when it comes to the academic scholarships, you would have a quota nigga in the whole damn university if it was up to you. So that just goes to show that merit and achievement, that shit is a fucking facade, right? It's a facade. Hard work, hard work, right? That only applies to people of color. So the university say, oh, they victims. No, you're not. You've been the beneficiaries of it. That's the way, again, I gave you the history of the universities and how that whole college started off as sitting at the foot of the guild. It's always been about who had the most money so that they could take to being under the master. Well, that was going away to now make a distinction so that it would keep a lot of the blacks and the Hispanics from now being educated because, again, money has always been the game because that's how y'all built this. Well, you ain't built shit. Well, how you benefited from off the backs of my ancestors, damn it. Enough of that bullshit. Let's get in and talk about this generational wealth. Let's talk about some of that shit, right? Look at this, right? Let me show you this here, man. Let me show y'all something. Hold on, see if I got it right now. Let me make sure I got it right here. Let me make sure I got it right because I want y'all to make sure you see this. I want you to make sure you understand this, right? I want you to make sure you understand this. Let me make sure I got the right one here. All right, let's see. Damn, man, I hate that to happen like that, right? I think that's back up here. Hold on, let me do this right quick. So y'all, let me do this. Give me 1 second. I gotta make sure I got the right one.
$30 trillion are about to change hands in the U.S. Baby boomers are the wealthiest generation in American history, and they're about to pass down those riches over the next few decades. It's being called the Great Wealth Transfer. But here's the hitch. That transfer might not be so great if boomers don't take the right estate planning steps. Step 1, make sure that inheritance you're poised to bequeath remains intact. The cost of long-term care can wipe out an entire estate in the space of just a few years. Now, the premiums can be hefty, but some financial advisors say long-term care insurance is worth it. And nothing is certain except death and taxes. Now, most estates are not subject to federal estate tax because the bar for exemption is pretty high. But watch out for state tax. Some have much lower estate tax thresholds. Now, let's say you want to put some conditions on how your inheritance is spent. Try a trust. You can set an exact time when assets pass on to your beneficiaries or how it should be spent. Another huge plus, trusts can minimize estate taxes and keep your estate out of probate court. Keep in mind that probate court process can prove to be both time-consuming and expensive, which ultimately chips away at your estate. Another way to avoid it, ditch the will and try something called a living trust. It will hold your assets while you're still alive and then transfer it over to your beneficiaries after you die. Plus, avoiding probate means it's a private transaction. Probate is public, which means everyone knows your business. So take care of that legacy planning now, and your heirs will be well in the black later on.
Hey there, thanks for checking out CNBC on YouTube. Be sure to subscribe to stay up to date on all of the day's biggest stories. You can also click on any of the videos around me to watch the latest from CNBC. Thanks for watching.
Karin joins us now from Atlanta. Karin, thanks so much for being with us. You write about this week's admissions scandal, saying, quote, "For some, it was shocking and eye-opening. For others, it was like watching an open secret finally getting said aloud." Explain why there was such different reaction to this story.
Here's how to prepare your heirs for the $68 trillion with a T great wealth transfer. You know I'm going to say that again. Here's how to prepare your heirs for the $68 trillion with a T great wealth transfer. This story was done at CNBC, February the 25th, 2019, and this is how it reads. Baby boomers are set to pass to their children a mind-boggling $68 trillion, the biggest generational wealth transfer ever. Much of that wealth is held in individual retirement accounts. Any mistake in the transfer of those funds can result in a big tax bite out of that inheritance. By understanding the rules before acting, heirs of IRAs can plan in ways that avoid unnecessary taxes and ensure continued tax-deferred growth. We are entering the largest wealth transfer in history. Over the next 25 years, according to a report from research firm Cerulli Associates, 45 million U.S. households will pass a mind-boggling $68 trillion to their children, the biggest generational wealth transfer ever. Individual retirement accounts alone in the United States held more than $9 trillion in assets at the beginning of last year, according to the Investment Company Institute 2018 Investment Company Fact Book. To that point, many Americans are inheriting substantial wealth from their parents through IRAs, but mistakes in handling these accounts could result in needlessly losing much of this wealth to taxes. In order to increase the chances of a successful wealth transfer, it's important to understand the proper steps to follow. Any mistakes in handling inherited IRAs can incur hurtful taxes. To avoid these errors, heirs should have a thorough understanding of rules, preferably with the help of a qualified tax professional. Otherwise, they could end up paying an expectedly large portion of this inheritance to Uncle Sam and prematurely losing the main benefits of these accounts, long-term tax-deferred asset growth. The rules for non-spouse beneficiaries are more restrictive than those for spouses. Common errors by non-spouse heirs of traditional IRAs include taking cash out too soon or under the wrong circumstance can invalidate these accounts and make withdrawals taxable as ordinary income. For single individuals or house heads or households, this tax rate is 37% for incomes greater than $500,000. To avoid this hit and keep these accounts valid as tax deferred, heirs should be careful not to touch them before transferring them directly into accounts created expressly and solely for this purpose. Tilting inherited IRA accounts incorrectly will be costly. These accounts must be tilted with precise wording that designates them as being inherited, stating the names and date of death of the benefactor. Thus, it clears from the title that rules for inherited IRAs apply. Transfers shouldn't be executed until the new account is correctly set up and tilted. Don't overlook the required minimum distribution. Owners must make these required minimums withdrawals annually, starting at age 70 and a half. Here, heirs of IRAs must take RMDs in proportion based on their age. Failing to do so can trigger a painful 50% IRS penalty on the amount that should have been withdrawn that year. After learning that RMDs don't kick in until the age of 70 and a half for original holders of IRAs, some heirs mistakenly assume that this applies to inherited IRAs. If the benefactor had begun taking RMDs but had not taken one in the year of their death, heirs should be sure to take the withdrawal required for that year before transferring their account. Failing to divide IRAs by having them transferred to separate accounts of multiple heirs, benefactors may choose to split up their IRAs among their heirs, but often they don't. In these cases, it is up to the heirs to do this. This is especially important if there's a significant age difference among heirs. Let's say 3 siblings inherit an IRA, and one is much older than the other 2. If the IRA isn't split into 3 accounts, the age of the oldest sibling is used to determine the amounts of RMDs for all 3. This could mean that the younger heirs would have to take out more money sooner than they'd like, incurring more tax, though no minimum withdrawals are required for Roth IRA owners. There are for heirs of these accounts, but these RMDs are tax-free. Making contributions. Tax rules forbid heirs from contributing to inherit IRAs. Doing so can invalidate accounts, making all of the assets in them taxable as ordinary income. Some heirs inadvertently make contributions to their inherited IRAs that they intended for their own IRAs. This can be costly. Let's say you inherit $1 million IRA and make a $100 contribution to it. This could trigger federal tax of $370,000 plus applicable state and local taxes. That idea is to grow the account as long as permissible under the rules, taking RDMs and incurring taxes incrementally. Assessing that creditor protection still applies. In many states, IRAs tend to be protected from creditors and bankruptcy judgment, but inherited IRAs may lose this protection. Thus, when leaving an IRA to a financially irresponsible heir, perhaps one with gambling or spending issues, one option to protect these assets is to leave it to a trust, created to serve the heir's interests. Understanding the rules before acting, heirs of IRS can plan in ways that avoid unnecessary tax and assure continued tax-deferred growth. The key is to not touch the account without awareness of the consequences and to get a grasp of tax rules quickly, as various deadlines are involved. After the account is correctly transferred into a properly titled inherited account, cash can be taken out with minimum tax consequences in the forms of RMDs. African Americans look to life insurance for wealth transfer. You know I'm going to say that again. African Americans look to life insurance for wealth transfer. This story was done March the 7th, 2019, coming from, it looks like, the insurancenews.net or .com. This is how it reads. African Americans view life insurance as more than a means to pay for final expenses. They are increasingly looking to life insurance as a way to transfer wealth and leave a legacy. Those were among the findings of New York Life Insurance Gap survey that showed African Americans report more financial stress than the overall population, but are also more proactive about addressing it. Half of African American surveys said planning for the future causes them a high degree of anxiety versus 44% of all adults. Nearly 1/3 of African Americans reported feeling financially insecure, and 46% said they are concerned about maintaining their current level of income. Despite this level of financial stress, nearly 80% of African Americans said having life insurance is a goal for them versus 63% of all adults. More than 90% of African Americans said they believe life insurance helps future generations succeed. I'm thinking about their financial futures. African Americans recognize the opportunity to use life insurance to protect their families and at the same time create wealth for the black community at large, said Eric Jackson, New York Life Corporate Vice President and Market Manager. Our agents are consistently seeing attitudes about life insurance shift from primarily using proceeds to cover burial expenses to leveraging policies to grow small businesses, fund a college education, and leave a legacy for future generations. African Americans are looking for expert guidance, the survey showed, with nearly 80% saying they would consider seeking professional help from a financial advisor. Of those African Americans who are already working with an advisor, 65% say they meet with their advisor more than once per year, versus 49% of all adults. How do advisors approach African Americans about life insurance? We think the conversation has to be more about how do we use life insurance as a tool to build wealth in the community instead of just using life insurance as a burial tool, Jackson said. Advisors, as they have that conversation, can show that life insurance can help someone move forward financially and do more than cover final expenses. All right, so we back, right? So, did you hear that? They said that there's about to be $68 trillion being transferred from the baby boomers, when I would assume Generation X will want to be the ones who are going to inherit it. Right? Baby boomers is the one that's on, again, they setting it up as saying baby boomers are, all the retired, they, pretty much baby boomers are pretty much now either retired, have been retired. So I guess, you're setting up the money because a lot of them got money that would probably be here a lot longer than they will. And so 68 trillion with a T, right? And they be talking about, oh, black people got $1 trillion as collectively out of 40 million, 50 million people. And talking about we got a spending power of 1 trillion. And here is collectively $68 trillion for retired people. So who fooling who? Now this 68 trillion, I'm not going to say some but all, means some but not all. There's going to be some black folks in there, right? There's going to be some black folks in there. There's some black folks who come from some people who got some money, and they're going to be able to transfer some money again, because baby boomers came at a good time where, the dollar was a little bit more. They was able to put a lot bit money into the system and so forth and get some. But again, the dynamics will be demographically. This was primarily going to be, if it's 68 trillion, we're going to say 90-something% of the money of this 60 trillion is going in the hands of white folks. Right? And so, as we were talking about before, see, being able to use money, right? Money to get people in based on the fact that you got extra ends on ends, fist in hand of cash, accessible, fuck off money, got plenty of it. So we can see why an industry of institution, the so-called high learner, were the highest bidder. Now this one over here is often to throw in your contribution, your coffer box, right? I read where somebody had got to get to Yale. Daddy had gave about $2.6 million, right? And that was allowed, that was a guarantee to get that boy in there, that now he get to say he went to Yale, right? Due to the simple fact that, again, like a vending machine, he gave the money. Vending machine, put the money in and they extrapolate out, get your diploma, right? But the problem is the country is being noticed that, again, the way the country is run and how it's just seen like incompetent people and in positions, and a lot of people will say that the highest office in the land has that in it too, right? And so that is the end sum of what you get when people play this type of game. You don't get the best qualified individual, you just get the highest bidder. May not still be the most qualified. And so the money, you see, they have the wealth is there, so you can play this kind of game. But the other people are scrambling against mani and mano, brains versus brain, physicality and gifts versus gift, versus this other one who's just using capitalism, the money that it has garnered through the oppression of other peoples. And so this article, the reason why I brought the article is, one, is to show, again, Tone Talks, he puts in a lot of good work, again, with Yvette Carnell, with Breaking Brown, this fam from the ADOS, DOS, BADOS. And, I had seen this article myself, and I decided, again, to put it in what I'm doing today. And so when you look at this, what it said. Now, again, remember what we talking about, or I was talking about, showing about the college. Now, this article in itself is showing you about the $68 trillion. And it was talking about the transfer. Now, the thing was, did you peep the game that the article was talking about? The article in itself was saying things like this. It was talking about how to transfer and set up the money so that you're not actually losing and not paying taxes. See, this show you how much this game is rigged for those who got money. Those who got money really don't pay a lot of money. That's why they said you never got a chance to see your president tax returns, right? Because you kind of find out that rich folks know all the loopholes, know all the tricks, right? And, you know, they said that's the game. I'm not cheating. Matter of fact, if you look at the etymology of the word cheating, it's not even a white word. They said the origin of the word is unknown. So that's, again, they teaching you how to be morally right and honest and all that. But that ain't the game they playing. So it's all about win at all expense and all costs. So cheating is not even a word that there was even part of their vocabulary, right? And so the game of this article was saying things like, you know, it says the transfer of those funds can result in big tax bites out of that inheritance. So we're going to give you some tricks so that you don't lose a lot of your money. Now, again, what a lot of the disproportionate people, right, who've been, you know, systematically out of the system, that tax money could be allocated in helping them. You got a lot of money. You got a lot. But no. No, you're not going to pay. You know why we don't pay? Well, we the ones creating all the damn jobs. We're the ones giving you places to live. So why do we have to pay more? Okay. So they give them the game right here. Let me break it down real quick to you, right? Now it says, by understanding the rules before acting, right, heirs of the IRS can plan in ways. Excuse me, y'all. That came out of nowhere, right? All right. So it says, by understanding the rules before acting, heirs of an IRA can plan in ways that avoid unnecessary taxes. See? Playing in the game to understand how the rules of the game go so that you don't have to be doing this. Huh? The game has always been rigged. And it says, and assure continued tax deferred growth. Huh? So you're going to not pay taxes and you're going to make it where it could be deferred in your tax so that it can grow. Right? Now it says over the next 25 years, according to that, it said that firm was a Cerulli, that it said about 45 million U.S. households will pass a mind-boggling of $68 trillion to their children. Right? 45 million. Basically, that would be the black. If we were to say the transfer would be reparations. How about that? Is that what you're talking about? Yeah, I know they ain't talking about no damn transfer. But 45 million would pretty much cover ADOS, DOS, BADOS, wouldn't it? Huh? Right? We got about 40, it's at 37, 40 million. That could cover all of us. That could be right there. Huh? Trillion plus each. Dream. You can, I can dream about you, right? Okay. So it goes on to talk about now most of this money is in individual retirement accounts, right? And it said just in the U.S. held more than $9 trillion in assets in the beginning of last year. There was $9 trillion in assets held by last year. Now, again, this whole article is teaching you how to, properly how to split it up, how to take money out so you don't be penalized. So the game always been rigged. Huh? See? But they want you to play by a certain type of rule, but they don't play by that rule because the game is rigged in their favor. Again, I guess if you could make your own world, I guess you would have, rigged it in a way that it would be beneficial for you and yours. And since we can only fathom that until the reality becomes a reality, then, Huey Newton Lewis, you can only dream about her, right? So I gave you the next one. I ain't going to talk about it, but again, I just want to show that. Again, anybody want to know, go ahead and check that article out. But again, when you read that, that's what they're doing. They're just giving them the game, how not to pay no money and make sure the way you do it this way. They said it right then and there in the article. Go back and rewind and listen to it again if you don't believe me. Now, the next part I gave to you, because we're closing in on the 2-hour mark. I gave the next article. The article was about how ADOS, BADOS, DOS look for life insurance for wealth transfer. Now, wait a minute. That one prior to was about them having retired, meaning they getting their money from the baby boomer generation who accumulated so much money that it is in this country's history the greatest generational wealth transfer in the history of this country of $68 trillion. And I believe more than 90% of that trillions is in white folks' hands, right? So the only way that there's some transfer of wealth for black folks, you got to go get life insurance. Huh? Life insurance. So basically, somebody has to die in order for you to come up some. Huh? Now, I'm not saying that it wouldn't be beneficial to have some life insurance, and then again, that helps some of the last final expenses and things of that sort. But they talking about the way that you can only come up with some generational wealth through using the tool of insurance. Ain't that something? See, that just shows how much of a gap and how this history of this depriving and disenfranchising has made such a disadvantage to ADOS, DOS, BADOS, to the fact that you're talking about, well, you have black people out here who trying to use life insurance as a game. Well, what about again, you may not know, did you know there's been a lot of insurance scandals going back, right? Going back 1905 and going forward from there all the way up, right? Right? It was all that, right? So you can invest in that, but they even said that may not be, the best thing to be doing, right? So in that article, it was just saying that you got black people out here who are actually, going to get advisors, right? But they were saying that, the black people who are trying to do this have a lot of high anxieties, right? They having the thought of having financial insecurity. Well, guess so. Somebody got $68 trillion. They high 90% of having all the wealth in the country. Why would that be part of their mindset? They always got somebody who can go to get some kind of, you understand? I mean, when you look at statistically, when they talk about a high school graduate of a white person, condemning me is equivalent to making the same amount of money as an undergraduate of a black person. Huh? So money ain't the game. Money ain't a problem. Money ain't a thing. Huh? Money ain't a thing. See? So you can use that as a way to how to do and get around. But here you is scrimping and scrapping and trying to find ways to do something to try to give your kids in some generational stuff. But it has to be in the guise of either dying, right? And just imagine if a lot of the young men who got killed, right? If all there would have been insurance, you'd probably put the insurance business, you know what I'm saying? We probably knocked the insurance business out. If all those children, all them young men that been killed over the last 20, 30 years, if all would have been on insurance, there would be no insurance company. They would have been bankrupt. And cops would have definitely stopped killing because it was costing them too much money, right? So you're looking at this way to use it as a tool to be able to extrapolate some money. Again, there's certain terms that you use when you get in insurance, right? And you can use it and take money out and so forth. But again, that's the only way you can get some wealth. We've been here as long as you've been here. Put in more work than you put in more, right? And this is the only way we can get it. We say bullshit to that. Right? And so, those who've been in the game a little bit longer, you see the thing, you're going to call it for what it is, right? We won't say it for what it is, but the new ones, this is what they trying to do. So they going to financial advisors. They going to the financial advisors and trying to get information about how, the best way they could do and extrapolate. All that when the game is rigged. The game is rigged. The game ain't playing fair. You could do all the right things. You can try to do it by achievement and marriage and kind of find out you get undermined because they're doing it in the way they doing it, right? You try to do it in this way and thinking that, then they'll find a way that they'll take your money from you in that way too. It's never playing fair with you. It was never designed with you in it. And you got to remember that. And don't forget that. So the only way that you can come out of this, and I'm going to get up out of this, and again, I'm going to thank everybody who came out here today. Listen to the video. Again, I'm trying to get back into it. I won't be gone again like that no more. I took my little hiatus. I'm back on the grind again. And, you know, want to thank each and every one of you who clicked that one. Go ahead. You know it is. Give me that like, dislike. Again, John Henry Clark said we all got is each other, right? But I ain't going yet. I'm just giving you this because I got something else I'm going to lead you out. But I ain't going to say nothing after I've done that because that's going to be self-explanatory. When I do that, it's normally self-explanatory. So, you know, to the next one, see each other, give everybody that universal nod. What's good, fam? What's good, sister? To all those, Miss Washington out there, what's good, girl? You ain't been hitting me up. My man, man, why I can't think of your name right now, bruh. You be sending me all the stuff, right? You know I know your name. This is in my mind right now, right? But keep doing what you're doing, bro. I got you covered. And everybody else, peace and love to y'all. To the next video. So we're going to leave out on this, on the couple of this here. And this article here that I'm going to ride out with, right? You can get the whole entirety. Is just go back and just see the name of it, what you see when you see it. If you want to get the entirety, I would have did the entirety of it. But that would have been like, probably almost... It's that long of an article. Put it this way. It's a real long article and it's real good. So I'll take you almost through all of it. And but you want it in its entirety, you know, I'll give you a little something to show y'all something so you can go over there and do it for yourself and do your own investigation, do your own research at times. Right? This is Black Minds News and I'm Mr. Blows Your Mind and that's what I do over here, right? So I'm going to go ahead and give you this, and then we're going to ride about. And let me, yeah, for those who sitting on their hand, ain't sitting there and being stubborn, don't want to let me hold nothing, I got to remind you too, right? I got to remind you because you might walk up out of here and forget about everything. So to the next one, peace, love, and hair grease and all that, y'all. Check it out. The case for reparations. You know I'm going to say that again. The case for reparations. 250 years of slavery, 90 years of Jim Crow, 60 years of separate but equal, 35 years of racist housing policies. Until we reckon with our compounding moral debts, America will never be whole. This story was done by Ta-Nehisi Coates, June 2014. And this is how it reads. And if thy brother, a Hebrew man or a Hebrew woman, be sold unto thee and serve thee 6 years, then in the 7th year thou shalt let him go free from thee. And when thou sendest him out free from thee, thou shalt not let him go away empty. Thou shalt furnish him liberally out of thy flock and out of thy floor, and out of thy winepress, of that wherewith the Lord thy God hath blessed thee, thou shalt give unto him, and thou shalt remember that thou wast a bondman in the land of Egypt, and the Lord thy God redeemed thee. Therefore I command thee this thing today. Deuteronomy 15:12 through 15. Besides the crime which consists in violating the law and varying from the rule of reason, whereby man so far becomes degenerate and declares himself to quit the principles of human nature and to be a noxious creature, there is commonly injury done to some person or other, and some other man receives damage by his transgression, in which case he who hath received any damage has, besides the right of punishment common to him with other men, a particular right to seek reparations. John Locke, Second Treatise. By our unpaid labor and suffering, we have earned the right to the soil, many times over and over. And now we are determined to have it. Anonymous, 1861. So that's just one of my losses. Clyde Ross was born in 1923, the seventh of 13 children near Clarksdale, Mississippi, the home of the blues. Ross' parents owned and farmed a 40-acre tract of land flush with cows, hogs, and mules. Ross' mother would drive to Clarksdale to do her shopping in a horse and buggy, in which she invested all the pride one might place in a Cadillac. The family owned another horse with a red coat, which they gave to Clyde. The Ross family wanted for a little, save that which all black families in the Deep South then desperately desired, the protection of the law. In the 1920s, Jim Crow Mississippi was, in all facets of society, a kleptocracy. The majority of the people in the state were perpetually robbed of the vote, a hijacking engineered through the trickery of the poll tax and the muscle of the lynch mob. By 1882 and 1968, more black people were lynched in Mississippi than in any other state. You and I know what the best way to keep the nigger from voting, blustered Theodore Bilbo, a Mississippi senator and a proud Klansman. You do it in the night before the election. The state regime partnered robbery of the franchise with robbery of the purse. Many of Mississippi's black farmers lived in debt peonage under the sway of cotton kings who were at once their landlords, their employers, and their primary merchants. Tools and necessities were advanced against the return of the crop, which was determined by the employer. When farmers were deemed to be in debt, and they often were, the negative balance was then carried over to the next season. A man or woman who protested this arrangement did so at the risk of grave injury or death. Refusing to work meant arrest under vagrancy laws and forced labors under the state penal system. Well into the 20th century, black people spoke of their flight from Mississippi in much the same manner as their renegade ancestors had. In her 2010 book, The Warmth of Other Suns, Isabel Wilkerson tells the story of Eddie Irvin, a spinach picker who fled Mississippi in 1963. After being made to work at gunpoint, you didn't talk about it or tell nobody. Irvin said you had to sneak away. When Clyde Ross was still a child, Mississippi authorities claimed his father owed $3,000 in back taxes. The elder Ross could not read. He did not have a lawyer, and he did not know anyone at the local courthouse. He could not expect the police to be impartial. Effectively, the Ross family had no way to contest the claim and no protection under the law. The authorities seized the land, they seized the buggy, they took the cows, hogs, and mules, and so for the unkept or separate but equal, the entire Ross family was reduced to sharecropping. This was hardly unusual. In 2001, the Associated Press published a three-part investigation into the theft of black-owned land stretching back to the antebellum period. The series documented some 406 victims and 24,000 acres of land valued at tens of millions of dollars. The land was taken through means ranging from legal chicanery to terrorism. Some of the land taken from black families had become a country club in Virginia. The AP reported, as well as oil fields in Mississippi and a baseball spring training facility in Florida. Clyde Ross was a smart child. His teacher thought he should attend a more challenging school. There was very little support for educating black people in Mississippi, but Julius Rosenwald, a part owner of Sears Roebuck, had begun an ambitious effort to build schools for black children throughout the South. Ross' teacher believed he should attend the local Rosenwald school. It was too far for Ross to walk, and to get back in time to work in the fields, local white children had a school bus. Clyde Ross did not, and thus lost the chance to better his education. Then, when Ross was 10 years old, a group of white men demanded his only childhood possession, the horse with a red coat. "You can't have this horse. We want it," one of the white men said. They gave Ross' father $17. "I did everything for that horse," Ross told me. "Everything. And they took him, put him on the racetrack. I never did know what happened to him after that. But I know they didn't bring him back, so that's just one of my losses." The losses mounted. As sharecroppers, the Ross family saw their wages treated as the landlord's slush fund. Landowners were supposed to split the profits from the cotton fields with sharecroppers, but bales would often disappear during the count, or the split might be altered on a whim. If cotton was selling for 50 cents a pound, the Ross family might get 15 cents, or only 5. One year, Ross' mother promised to buy him a $7 suit for a summer program at their church. She ordered the suit by mail, but that year, Ross' family was paid only 5 cents a pound for cotton. The mailman arrived with the suit. The Rosses could not pay. The suit was sent back. Klaus Ross did not go to the church program. It was in these early years that Ross began to understand himself as an American. He did not live under the blind decree of justice, but under the heel of a regime that elevated armed robbery to a governing principle. He thought about fighting. "Just be quiet," his father told him, "because they'll come and they kill us all." Clyde Ross grew. He was drafted into the Army. The draft officials offered him an exemption if he stayed home and worked. He preferred to take his chances with war. He was stationed in California. He found that he could go into stores without being bothered. He could walk the streets without being harassed. He could go into a restaurant and receive service. Ross was shipped off to Guam. He fought in World War II to save the world from tyranny, but when he returned to Clarksdale, he found that tyranny had followed him home. This was 1947, 8 years before Mississippi lynched Emmett Till and tossed his broken body into the Tallahatchie River. The Great Migration, a mass exodus of 6 million African Americans that spanned most of the 20th century, was now in its second wave. The black pilgrims did not journey north simply seeking better wages and work, or bright lights and big adventures. They were fleeing the acquisitive warlords of the South that were seeking the protection of the law. Clyde Ross was among them. He came to Chicago in 1947 and took a job as a taster at Campbell's Soup. He made a stable wage, he married, he had children, his paycheck was his own. No Klansman stripped him of the vote. When he walked down the street, he did not have to move because of a white man was walking past. He did not have to take off his hat or avert his gaze. His journey from his peonage to full citizenship seemed near complete. Only one item was missing: a home, that final badge of entry into the sacred order of the American middle class of the Eisenhower years. In 1961, Ross and his wife bought a house in North Lawndale, a bustling community on Chicago's west side. North Lawndale had long been a predominantly Jewish neighborhood, but a handful of middle-class African Americans had lived there starting in the 1940s. The community was anchored by the sprawling Sears Roebuck headquarters. North Lawndale Jewish People Institute actively encouraged blacks to move into the neighborhood, seeking to make it a pilot community for interracial living. In the battle for integration then being fought around the country, North Lawndale seemed to offer promising terrain, but out in the tall grass, highwaymen nefarious as any Clarksdale kleptocrat was lying in wait. 3 months after Clyde Ross moved into his house, the boiler blew out. This would normally be a homeowner's responsibility, but in fact, Ross was not really a homeowner. His payments were made to the seller, not the bank. And Ross had not signed a normal mortgage. He bought an on-contract, a predatory agreement that combined all the responsibilities of homeownership with all the disadvantage of renting. While offering the benefit of neither, Ross had bought his house for $27,500. The seller, not the previous homeowner, but a new kind of middleman, had bought it for only $12,000 6 months before selling it to Ross. In a contract sale, the seller kept the deed until the contract was paid in full, and unlike with a normal mortgage, Ross would acquire no equity in the meantime. If he missed a single payment, he would immediately forfeit his $1,000 down payment, all his monthly payments, and the property itself. The men who peddled contracts in North Lawndale would sell homes at inflated prices and then evict families who could not pay, taking their down payment and their monthly installments as profits. Then they bring in another black family, rinse and repeat. He loads them up with payments they can't meet. An office secretary told Chicago Daily News of her boss, the speculator Lou Fushansis, in 1963. Then he takes the property away from them. He sold some of the buildings 3 or 4 times. Ross had tried to get a legitimate mortgage in another neighborhood, but was told by a loan officer that there was no financing available. The truth was that there was no financing for people like Clyde Ross. From the 1930s through the 1960s, black people across the country were largely cut out of the legitimate home mortgage market through means both legal and extra-legal. Chicago whites employed every measure from restrictive covenants to bombings to keep their neighborhoods segregated. The efforts were buttressed by the federal government. In 1934, Congress created the Federal Housing Administration. The FHA insured private mortgages, causing a drop in interest rates and a decline in the size of the down payment required to buy a house. But an insured mortgage was not a possibility for Clyde Ross. The FHA had adopted a system of maps that rated neighborhoods according to their perceived stability. On the maps, green areas rated A indicated in demand, neighborhoods that, as one appraiser put it, lacked a single foreigner or Negro. These neighborhoods were considered excellent prospects for insurance. Neighborhoods where black people lived were rated D and were usually considered ineligible for FHA backing. They were colored in red. Neither the percentage of black people living there nor their social class mattered. Black people were viewed as a contagion. Redlining went beyond FHA-backed loans and spread to their entire mortgage industry, which was already rife with racism, excluding black people from most legitimate means of obtaining a mortgage. A government offering such bounty to builders and lenders could have required compliance with a non-discrimination policy. Charles Abrams, the urban study expert who helped create the New York City Housing Authority, wrote in 1955, instead, the FHA adopted a racial policy that could well have been culled from the Nuremberg laws. The devastating effects are cogently outlined by Melvin L. Olivers and Thomas M. Shapiro in their 1995 book, Black Wealth, White Wealth. Locked out of the greatest mass-based opportunity for wealth accumulation in American history, African Americans who desired and were able to afford home ownership found themselves consigned to central city communities where their investments were affected by the self-fulfilling prophecies of the FHA appraisals, cut off from sources of new investments. Their homes and communities deteriorated and lost value in comparison to those homes and communities that the FHA appraisers deemed desirable. In Chicago and across the country, whites looking to achieve the American dream could rely on a legitimate credit system backed by the government. Blacks were hurled into the sight of unscrupulous lenders who took them for money and for sport. It was like people who like to go out and shoot lions in Africa. It was the same thrill a housing attorney told the historian Burl Sater in her 2009 book, Family Properties, the thrill of the chase and the kill. The kill was profitable. At the time of his death, Lou Fushanis owned more than 600 properties, many of them in North Lawndale, and his estate was estimated to be worth $3 million. He made much of this money by exploiting the frustrated hopes of black migrants like Clyde Ross. During this period, according to one estimate, 85% of all black home buyers who bought in Chicago bought on contracts. If anybody who is well established in the business of Chicago doesn't earn $100,000 a year, a contract seller told the Saturday Evening Post in 1962, he is loafing. Contract sellers became rich. North London became a ghetto. Clyde Ross still lives there. He owns his home. He's 91, and the emblems of survival are all around him. Awards for service in his community, pictures of his children in caps and gowns. But when I asked him about his home in North Lawndale, I heard only anarchy. We were ashamed. We did not want anyone to know what we were, that ignorant. So Ross told me he was sitting at his dining room table. His glasses were as thick as his Clarksdale drawl. I come out of Mississippi where there was one mess and come up here and got into another mess. So how dumb am I? Didn't want anyone to know how dumb I was. When I found myself caught up in it, I said, how I just left this mess. I just left no laws and no regards, and then I come here and get cheated wide open. I would probably want to do some harm to some people, you know. If I had been violent like some of us, I thought, man, I got caught up in this stuff. Can't even take care of my kids. I didn't have enough money for my kids. You could fall through the cracks easy fighting these white people, and no laws. But fight Clyde Ross did. In 1968, he joined the newly formed Contract Buyers League, a collection of black homeowners of Chicago's South and West Sides, all whom had been locked into the same system of predation. There was Howell Collins, who contracts called for him to pay $25,500 for a house that a speculator had bought for $14,500. There was Ruth Wells, who managed to pay out half her contract expecting a mortgage, only to suddenly see an insurance bill materializing out of thin air. A requirement the seller had added without Wells' knowledge. Contract sellers use every tool at their disposal to pilfer from their clients their sacred white residents into selling low. They scared white residents into selling low. They lied about property's compliance with building codes, then left the builder, the buyer, responsible when city inspectors arrived. They presented themselves as real estate brokers when in fact they were owners. They guided their clients to lawyers who were on the scheme. The contract buyers, legitimate, a league fought back. Members who would eventually number more than 500 went out to the posh suburbs where the speculators lived and embarrassed them by knocking on their doors and informing them of the details of the contract lending trade. They refused to pay their installments instead of holding monthly payments in an escrow account. Then they brought in a suit against the contract sellers, accusing them of buying properties and reselling in such a manner to reap from members of the Negro race large and unjust profits.
Portions of the following program may be unsuitable for younger or more sensitive viewers. Viewer discretion is advised.
Remember, the enemy has only images and illusions, behind which he hides his true motives. Destroy the image, and you will break the enemy.
I'm here to tell you tonight that the businessmen, the mayor of this city, the police commissioner of this city, and everybody in the white power structure of this city must take a responsibility for everything.
Can you feel it? Can you feel it?
Luther and I, and everyone in this arena tonight, are unified by the same great American values. We're proud of our country. We respect our flag. Wouldn't you love to see one of these NFL owners, when somebody disrespects our flag, to say, get that son of off the field right now, out, he's fired. He's fired!
Race is when you use your power and influence to subject people into inferiority. Utterances can't be racist.
Look around you, man. They own this shit. They own this couch you sitting on, them shoes you got on your feet, this building, this school, this country, you. We're behind enemy lines, dog.
So you must first of all remember that this system was not originally designed with black people in mind. Right on, and it definitely was not prepared for black people to, in the end, begin to demand their rights and an equal share in this country which they died for. Right on. Hey, and we definitely are not going back to Africa. In the church, we used to sing the song, "Good News, the chariot is coming." While you sit here today, knowing that you have come to hear good news, you must realize in advance what good news for you might be bad news for somebody else. What good news for the sheep might be bad news to the wolf. They say, oh, things are getting so much better for you. In 1849, it was hitting blacks on the head 100 times a day. In 1990, they hit them 48 times a day. Isn't it better? Oh, it's got to be better. You're saved 52 blows.
The only purpose of most black Americans on earth today is to destroy.
I think that's noble. Italians love Italians, when Irish love Irish, but when a nigga loves a nigga, it's an unpardonable sin. They have blood in their hands. When we say they have blood in their hands, we are not saying him, George Bezos, went and killed. But white people colonized us. They dispersed us. They enslaved our people. They sucked our economy dry. They are still sucking it dry even today. That's white people. Tony Blair, George Bush, Napoleon Bonaparte, Leopold, Adolf Hitler, Benjamin Netanyahu. All white people, they are the same. They are racist and they are full of hate.
I've been waiting for you. You have many questions, and though the process has altered your consciousness, you remain irrevocably human. Ergo, some of my answers you will understand, and some of them you will not. Concordantly, while your first question may be the most pertinent, you may or may not realize it is also the most irrelevant.
Why am I here?
Our world is coming crumbling down. The coons are coming.
You got to understand that white America has an uncanny way of making the victim the victimizer. Excuse me, master, for putting my head in the way of your club. Not that your club is brutalizing my head and putting hickeys on it. My head got in the way of your free swing and broke your shiny stick, and I want to apologize for that.
Your life is the sum of a remainder of an unbalanced equation inherent to the programming of the Matrix. You are the eventuality of an anomaly which, despite my sincerest efforts, I have been unable to eliminate from what is otherwise a harmony of mathematical precision. While it remains a burden assiduously avoided, it is not unexpected and thus not beyond a measure of control, which has led you inexorably here.
There are more connections in the human body than there are stars in the galaxy. We possess a gigantic network of information to which we have almost no access.
Matrix is older than you know. I prefer counting from the emergence of one integral anomaly to the emergence of the next, in which case this is the 6th version.
5 months before me. 3. There are only 2 possible explanations. 5 months before me. Either no one told me, or no one knows.
Precisely. As you are undoubtedly gathering, the anomaly is systemic, creating fluctuations in even the most simplistic equations.
Control me! I'm gonna smash you to fucking kill you! You can't make me do anything like Chris! Choice. The problem is choice.
Let us remember that we are not brutalized because we're Baptists. We're not brutalized because we're Methodists. We're not brutalized because we're Muslims. We're not brutalized because we're Catholics. We're brutalized because we are black people in America.
Because white people made him to be what he is. They made him to look evil, because that's their role, to make all of us black people to look evil and to hate ourselves. I can't hate.
You're a nigga till you die. If you're a poor nigga, you're a poor nigga. If you're a rich nigga, you're a rich nigga. But you never stop being a nigga. And if you get to be educated, you're just an educated nigga.
Well, I'm told every day I'm on air that I'm racist because I call out racism. That is maddening to me, and I'm crying about it because it's crazy.
So the Honorable Elijah Muhammad is teaching you and I and trying to tell the white man to get this powder keg out of his house. Let the black man separate from his house. Let the black man have his own house. Let the black man have his own land and his own property.
I thought the bitch was white! Damn it! I thought the bitch was white!
That's true.
I think that white people are so guilty, knowing what they've done to black people, that they feel if the deeds were reversed, they would hate the black man if he had done the same thing to them. So it's actually, it reflects a guilt complex on the part of whites when they ask us, do we hate them? And if you notice, Uncle Sam has formed a habit of going all over the world. He calls it the ugly American, or the American image. He thinks that everybody hates him because it's a guilt complex. And if you think that if you are worried about Europeans hating you, and they're your allies and your cousins, well, naturally it would follow for you to think that Negroes in this country would hate you, especially in light of what has been done to black people in this country by white people.
Now check it out. The white ball dominates everything, right? Knocks the shit out the yellow ball, the red ball, right? And the game's over. when the white ball drives the black ball completely off the table.
But you have to see that all of this is hypocrisy.
I love Malcolm. Malcolm called me the Sunday that he died. I was working Basin Street East. He said, "Brother Greg, you coming by today?" And I said, "Malcolm, I love you." And I said, "I love you so much, I don't even want to take a chance to be there." He said, "What do you mean, Brother Greg?" I said, "Well, I close tonight, Sunday night at Basin Street East." And I said, "But I had my wife book me a flight into Chicago at 8 o'clock this morning. And I'm going to Chicago, and I had way beneath my salary booked me into a college about 10 miles from the airport. And I'm going to go there and speak this afternoon, and I'm going to stay there until they tell me you dead. Because I'm not going to let this government get two of us for the price of one. And I'm going to call Adam Clayton Powell when I finish talking to you and beg him not to come there. Because today, the United States government is going to get you."